Hello, everybody. This is Mike from the Hey, Are You Still There podcast. My wife Beth and I would like to invite you to join us each week as we examine life at the intersection of marriage, family, careers, and ministry. Through 28 years of ministry, 26 years of marriage, 23 years of professional careers, and 21 years of being parents to 3 kids, our fun and honest discussions promise to have something for everyone. And now, on to the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Hey, Are You Still There podcast. This is Mike.
And Beth.
And Beth, it's good to have you back this week.
Thanks. It feels really weird. It feels like I haven't been here in a very long time.
Well, it's been 2 weeks since the last podcast. You've been home.
Yes, but I mean, it just feels like I haven't done this in a long time.
Yeah, so I did the solo podcast last week. Tell me what you thought about it when you listened to it. What did you think?
I haven't listened to it. I never listen to these. I don't, because I don't know. It's weird. It feels weird.
You say it feels weird to hear yourself talk, but you have no idea what I said last week by myself.
Then I will listen to it after this today.
I don't believe you.
I will. I'll listen to it while I exercise.
I had people that said they thought it was very good.
Did they?
Yeah.
Who?
People.
Like who?
I don't want to
Ross?
name names.
Ross?
Among others.
Who else?
Other people.
I'm trying to think.
I don't want to name names.
Doug?
I'm just saying. There were people who said they enjoyed it.
Are there other people or just those two?
I didn't even say it was just those two.
Oh, but you said people. I just didn't know. Well, anyway. Well, I'm glad people liked it. That's good.
Well, can I tell everybody what you said?
What did I say?
So, Beth, as you heard last week, Beth was busy with Salem College functions for Salem Reunion Weekend, where she is the alumni board president. So I did the podcast by myself. I recorded it on Friday morning, posted it on Saturday morning as I normally do. Saturday night at dinner, Beth says, "So when are we going to record the podcast?"
Yeah.
I said, "Honey, that ship's done sailed."
But you didn't even talk to me about it.
I didn't need to. You were busy.
But it's supposed to be our podcast, is what you used to say.
It is
now
our podcast on my Big 12 list.
Yeah, but if it's ours, then I feel like there should be more communication before you just randomly decide to do things independently.
And if it's ours, my argument would be you should think about it before Saturday night.
I forget what day you post it. I'm not responsible
12
for that.
12 hours after it had already been posted.
Well, I didn't know we were on a set schedule, that it has to be posted at exactly the same time.
Yes.
And I just thought...
Consistency is key, Beth.
But usually when you know I have stuff going on, you're like, we'll do it earlier in the week, or you're like, we'll just post it late. So I didn't think like that you would do it without me.
Well, I did.
It feels like a betrayal.
I did do it without
It's
you.
tainted, this entire podcast now.
And, it stood on its own.
I'm glad.
Yeah, it did very well.
Is that really what this is about?
It's probably the highest streamed, downloaded, rated one we've ever had.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do we get them rated?
Yes.
Oh.
They get rated.
How many people have rated it?
A lot.
Oh, okay. 2?
A lot of my fans.
2, Ross and Doug.
So let's talk about Salem. Not the cat.
Yes.
But Salem College.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about Salem.
Well, what do you mean?
Well, you went to college there.
Yes.
It's an all-girls school.
It's a women's college, to correct you. So it's Salem Academy College. So it is an all-girls high school, and then it is a women's college. It's in Winston-Salem. It was founded by the Moravians, and Moravians are pretty cool. I didn't know a ton about them. I mean, there are a lot of Moravians in Winston, but I didn't know as much until I went to Salem. But they have a lot of really nice traditions that I love that we were able to take part in when I was at Salem. And when I was there, I majored in chemistry, and I was student body president, and did a lot of things.
I like to tell people, since you went to an all-women's college,
yes,
you majored in chemistry and minored in math and feminism.
Yeah. I didn't think I think I was pretty feminist before I even got that minor. So
No, not coming out of Stokes County, you weren't.
I think I was. I mean, I'm sure it enhanced it. To
You were a feminist coming out of Stokes County because you wore pants.
I wouldn't say that. But anyway, I'm just saying, like, I don't think I minored in feminism. I think about feminist as being almost radical. I'm not that. I'm just for equality.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's different.
Yeah.
I just want to be, treated like an equal with.
As I've been working on my stand-up routine.
Oh gosh, here we go.
That is actually the opening joke that I'm gonna tell.
Which part?
About you going to an all-women's college and majoring in feminism. And,
minoring in feminism, majoring in chemistry.
You declaring when we got married that everything was going to be equal, 50-50.
Yes, I did.
And now, 27 years later, it's still 50-50. I do my 50 and your 50.
Oh, please. Come on now.
I do. That's going to be the opening lines of my joke.
Think about this then. Maybe in that way I did become more of a feminist. I became more radical.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I used to be for equality and now I'm for you being the more domestic one.
I'm basically your errand boy.
No, you're not.
Yeah, I am.
You make it sound so terrible. Are you going to tell any more of your stand-up routine? Do people get to have glimpses of it?
No, they got to come to my open mic whenever that happens.
The only thing that I don't like about this stand-up routine is that I feel like 90% of it's at my expense. Like, I feel like you married me just so you could be a stand-up comic and have good material.
You've given me 27 years of material.
I know.
That's your fault.
Is it not enough, though, that you always used me in your sermon illustrations? Is that not enough? Like, now I have to be the stand-up comic material as well?
Whatever pays the bills.
I bet it's paying great. I think the reverse is happening. Aren't we paying for you to learn to be a comic or whatever at some point?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the reverse.
You're at Salem Reunion.
Mm-hmm. And,
so what happens there? This past weekend, does certain years come back? Every year come back?
I didn't know you wanted to know all that. I'm sorry. I thought you just wanted to know about Salem College. Okay, so, yes, it's like every 5 years you have a reunion. And so...
this year would have been somebody's 20th, somebody else's 25th, somebody else's 30th.
Yes, exactly. And
okay.
So you have your classes. And so we had the board of trustees, though. So as the alumni board president, I'm also on the board of trustees. So we met and on Thursday and Friday. And then on Friday, they always have a Founders Day celebration where you have a speaker and everything. And then that night, there's a band and everybody just hangs out. And then on Saturday, there's class photos. They usually have current students set up club things so you can see or alums may set up and sell things and you can walk around and see the campus, see how things have changed. And then there's a big luncheon, and that's the part where I had some remarks was at the luncheon, because that's where everybody gets to have lunch. They do the awards, and then they also do classes. You have class gifts, and so they celebrate the classes that raise money for Salem and donate. And then you have your class meetings and things. And then that night you usually go out and have a dinner. So it's just an opportunity for you to get together with your class. But since it's with every 5 years, most of the time you're not overlapping. If you had friends that were a year above or below you or whatever, you're not overlapping with them. So that's kind of what reunion is.
Okay.
But I was lucky because I was, my reunion has always been we were the 225th celebration and then the 250th. We had major milestones when I graduated in the college's history. Do
you think you'll be around to celebrate the 300?
Oh gosh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
What's more likely to be around? You at what would be Salem's 300 or Salem at being around at 300? What would have been their 300?
I don't know. I think they're both highly likely. Highly likely. It is interesting, though, because I forget.
I've been pushing for it to go co-ed since I met you.
Oh, please. There are very few women's colleges left. A number have had to go co-ed or close over the years and things. And so, I mean, it is harder for women's colleges now. It's a struggle, I think. I think also college is just different in general. I mean, that's been the interesting thing, being, first of all, having our own college students, but also being on the board and learning things. Just students' approach to college is not the same. And it's kind of jarring because I remember when Jacob would talk about at Greensboro, not knowing, he said something one time, and it was somebody that lived next door, and he's like, I don't know who they are. And I'm like, how do you not know the person next door? Aren't you talking to people in your hall? he's like, why would I do that? And I'm like, well, I talked to Dave and Megan next door. And he's like, well, it's not like somebody's in the hall working on their truck or something like Dave does for you to go out and see them. But it's like, but when we were in college, like we had what we called happy half hour, and you would go out like before quiet hours and play loud music and like play games in the hall, and you had hall meetings. I don't know. You just had all these things where you were outside of your room a lot. And now today's college students, because of like their phones and technology and game systems, there's no reason for them to leave their room. I think college is just so different now. And in some ways, I think it's sad because I don't know. Maybe they don't feel, I guess now I'm watching my kids get some more deeper like friendships, but it's just a really different world.
So you are the only person I've ever met, literally, that, like when you celebrated your 50th birthday last year.
Yes.
You went on 2 50th birthday trips with 2 totally different groups of women that you went to college with.
Yes. And one was the class above me and one was my class. And so
how in the world
did that happen?
Yes.
So because 2 things. So a lot of the girls that were in the class above me, those women, first of all, interesting thing, I was a scholarship student. That's how I went to Salem. But when I went for scholarship weekend, I slept on the floor of, I think it was Chris and Katrina's room. Like that was one of the things. She would go stay overnight. Well, then, so I met those 2 friends who were a year older than me. And then they lived in the same dorm as I did my freshman year. So I kind of course, knew them. But then as I progressed, because I was in student government, some of them were in student government. So like when I was a junior, I was the SGA treasurer. So I did a lot with SGA president and vice president and honor code, honor council chair, things like that. So I got to know them. And I ended up living some of the times with those people that were in that class before me. So that's part of it. And then, of course, I had relationships with people in my class. But the other thing that's so interesting, I think, about Salem and those relationships is a lot of them, the class of 96 that was before me, a lot of them were local. Like a lot of my class, the class of 1997, I'm the only one that kind of stayed around here. Pretty much everybody else moved. So out of that class of 96, a lot of them ended up staying here, working here. Some worked at Salem Academy, things like that. So we just developed an even deeper friendship probably after graduating than we did while in college. And so they just kind of adopted me into their class. And so when they would have their reunions, I would see them. When they had reunions, when people came into town, I would see them. For the ones that lived out of town, and for the ones that lived here, we would just get together and do stuff. And so, and the other thing that's kind of cool about that too is like out of both those classes, like there's different levels, I guess you would say, of like closeness that you have with different people in the groups over the years because of different things that happen in life. So it's not like, like if there's 12 people, it's not like all 12 of them are like the best friends, but you have these different things that connect you with different people in that group. I don't know how to describe it. Both of those like get-togethers were pretty amazing because, I don't know, like I think about, I don't know if this is age or if it's just the types of friends I have or what, but in both situations, it was organized. Nobody felt left out. Nobody was worried that somebody was, like, I don't know, being left out. No one was being catty. I don't know. It was amazing. It was just time together where you just truly enjoyed each other's company and caught up. And it was really, really good. And I'm really glad we did it. Also, for the class of 96, one thing that had happened, we had a friend who was actually a class above me. So for that get together, there were also some people, there were class of 96 adopted a few people from the class of 95 and then me from the class of 97. But we'd had a friend that during COVID died of brain cancer. And so what had happened with her, she was actually the person that talked every year we would have these group chats, and she would say, when we all turn 50, we're going to do a big trip. We're going to do a cruise. We're going to do something, And so she really talked about, she was the consistent voice, I guess, that wanted to have that. And so I feel like, would everybody have done it if she hadn't passed? I hope so. But I also feel like, I don't know, that just gives you perspective when you have someone, that wanted something so badly and then died before they could experience it. And so I think for us, it was just a real treasure with both of my classes, just to be able to get together with these women and just share life. It was really nice. And it's really cool to be with people too. I mean, we've changed and grown, a lot of us, but there's still that core of who you are. We're the same people in some ways.
Would you say that you have a closer group of friends from high school or college?
Oh, college, 100%. High school was not the best experience for me. I have maybe a handful of people that I only have like 2 people from high school that I consistently talk to. College is, like I just said, the class of 96, that get together had 12 people. And then our other group, I don't know if it was like 8 or something, the 90. So, and these are people that we have group chats, either on like WhatsApp or Facebook or Signal. And, you're almost every day we're chatting. And it's not like sometimes we are chatting about stuff like my kid's really struggling with this, or I'm really struggling. And sometimes it's just silly stuff like, which dumbbells do you use for your exercise workout? Sometimes it's just stuff like that, or like we're just checking in, talking about what our house plants, or it could be anything, but it's just this constant connection that I have with them. And it's interesting too, because I went to law school, and I probably have, a few friends from law school that I'm very close to, but the Salem connection is unlike the high school connection or the law school connection. And it's not to say that I don't have good friends from those other stages of my life. I do. But the type of friendship I have with my college friends is very deep and very different. And I think that's the interesting thing about Salem when I've talked about it over the years, because people will make jokes and stuff about it. But we always tried to talk about like the secret sauce. And it's kind of like, what makes something, and I would think about this with Re3 at our church, the way people feel connected. Like, there's certain groups of people that you get together with. People come there, people are drawn there, and there's some dynamic that you can't describe and you can't recreate that is special about it. And that's the thing, because I think lots of places could come and try to do the things Salem did, and I don't think it would work. It's not, and a lot of what they did was not anything special that no other college does. In some ways, they probably offered a lot of less opportunities than a lot of other colleges, But the other thing that is really cool about my Salem friends is that this isn't 2 groups of people that live locally. Like I said, you and I've talked about it, like one of our friends has lived internationally all over the world. People pretty much in every other state, very few people are just here. So it's not like it's friendships of convenience either. It's not like, it's like, oh, we just all settled in the same neighborhood and we're able to keep in touch. People are just much more intentional about it. It just feels different.
Yeah, I did not enjoy high school either. And even though I had friends in high school and some really good friends, we're not close today.
You wouldn't be having a 50th, like getting a house or something and going and doing that for your 50th birthday.
Yeah, we all turned 50 and none of us even acknowledged one another. And some of them are on social media, so I can kind of keep up with. Most aren't, or whatever. And it's just, I don't know. It's just the friends I had in high school that kind of ended after high school.
But you seemed like it was interesting, because when you and I met, your high school friends, you were very tight.
Yeah.
And so where I felt like I had, just a few high school friends that I felt close to, you had this very tight group.
Yeah, but friends. A lot of people, they all still live local. You
Right.
know, like
Yeah.
they all went to college locally.
Yeah.
We just never left one
Yes.
another. So I think those roots stayed deeper until we were transplanted. And
Right.
then people started getting married and getting jobs and moving away for their jobs. And then it just all ended. And for me, I was thinking, I think my closest friends since high school have all been through the church.
Right.
And I think about, friendships being almost seasonal.
Right.
Depending on like where you're at in life, what church you're at, that kind of thing. It's tough, like for me, I don't find myself having a lot of time to make friends outside the church because the church takes and has taken up so much of my time that it's easy. If we're friendly, if we have a lot of the same in common, if we get along, we can be great friends as long as you're at my church. But the minute they leave, whether they leave on good terms or bad, we kind of lose contact.
Yeah.
And which is kind of sad because I don't have the capacity. I personally don't have the capacity to do that.
And there have been people too from my college years, that we didn't keep in touch. But the one thing I will say, and this is an interesting story.
And I admire that about you and your college friends. I mean,
Yeah.
you girls are tight and you are so
Yeah.
invested in one another's lives. And
Yeah.
it's
Well, and even one of my friends that we used to have, I'm so sad Ichabod's is closing, but we had a group, 2 of Salem women from different classes that ended up living in Winston. And we called ourselves the Royal Wasabi Sisters. And we would meet at Ichabod's probably once a month. I mean, this was pre-children and everything. And then everybody ended up moving. And so some of us ended up kind of scattered. But one of my friends had been battling breast cancer. And so I'd messaged and we talked about getting together. She lives maybe like 2 hours or something from me. And we could never make it work, the getting together. Well, then when I was taking Maria, I was visiting her in Disney. And we were eating breakfast at a restaurant. And in walks my friend Amanda and her husband and her daughter. And I am like, this has got to be like a God thing, because how does this woman that has been battling cancer, that we can't get together to save our lives at home, walks into this restaurant in Disney that we're both there at the same time and everything. So I hug her and end up talking to her, and her husband's like, she needs a girls' weekend. Y'all should plan something. So, I was, that's one thing I got to say too. I am intentional about friendships. So like, if I had let that go, I might not have reached out. But I mean, we weren't even home and I was already messaging her like, okay, when are we going to do something? When are we going to do like a little Disney trip together and hang out? And I'm going to be visiting Maria. Maria will be back at Disney this summer in June for her birthday. And so I'm going to go with my friend Amanda. So the 2 of us who haven't been able to see each other in I don't know how many years will be reunited. And she's another person from my class. I think that's the other thing, though, to your point. There's some groups of us that are super tight, but there's also some of those really cool connections that, like, one thing we don't let stand in the way. I think sometimes people will see each other and they feel awkward when they reconnect. And they're like, oh my gosh, we have so much in common. We really should hang out more. But then they never make it happen. Like, okay, well, I was really close to Amanda for a while. And then, like you said, life happened. She had kids. I had kids. We have work. She gets sick. I have, things going on in my family. But like, that doesn't have to stop you from reconnecting. But there are all these studies and things I read about what you're talking about how it becomes harder and harder to make friends as you age, especially deeply connected friendships, because in your youth, we see it with our kids. Like, I know they don't feel like they have a lot of time, but like, Jacob's living with all these guys. He see, half of his friends, he gets them jobs at Bojangles with him. They're living together. They're working together. You just have all this time to invest in the friendship thing before work and everything else starts to sort of, start to battle for your attention.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Why do you think it's so hard now as adults to find friends? Because I hear that more than anything else. As a pastor in counseling, I hear so many people talk about how lonely they are.
Yeah.
And these are men and women who are very personable, who you would think have an abundance of friends, and they all talk about they feel like they're on an island by themselves. They feel like they don't have any friend, anybody they can confide in. Why do you think, it's obviously high school, college, even grad school for some, you're almost in like a little incubator, friendship incubator, where it's like it grows, like your friendships
Yes.
grow and hatch and mature, but then you get out into free range, and all of a sudden it's not as easy anymore to make friends or to keep friends. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think there's a few reasons. I think one is, just like you said, some of it's life. Like, again, when you're young, even though you feel so busy, and I remember feeling crushed by law school and stuff like that. But once you, if you have kids or if you have aging parents or if you have a chronic illness or if your spouse is ill or, like life starts to happen and work gets very stressful and exhausting. And you get a job maybe and you only have 2 weeks of vacation. So that 2 weeks of vacation you can't use to, travel and see friends. And so I think part of it is just life gets so busy that things don't always line up. And I think you and I experienced this. We had deep relationships with friends from church that were younger than us, but we were the first ones to have kids out of that group. And so once you have kids and nobody else has kids, it's not like they were like intentionally, they all loved, our kids. It wasn't like they were like, we're not going to invite them. But like, we had 2 kids 22 months apart in diapers. We're never sleeping. It's taking every bit of strength we have just to work. We had no money, so we can't, if somebody wants to be like, let's go on a trip, we're like, okay, well, we don't have any money to do that. If somebody's like, well, we want to do this, well, I don't have anybody to keep the kids, so those things, so it becomes so much work.
So we can blame our kids for having no friends.
No, but I'm just, but you have to be, so I think part one is the friendships that I've maintained have been friends that are willing to give each other grace. And what I mean by that is I have some friends like that we'll get together for lunch, like we'll try once a month. And we know that if one of us has to cancel, we're going to be disappointed because we want that time together, but we don't make each other feel like crap about it. Because, there are people who will make it all about them or make you feel guilty. We both know, like, there's going to be a work emergency, there's this, there's that, and there are going to be times when we can't show up like we want to. So I think sometimes it's hard in those adult relationships for people to continue to give grace. I think the other thing that happens is you don't have, like, sometimes all it takes in college is just like, you live together, or law school, like we took a class together and we sit side by side. Workplace friendships are complicated. I'm lucky because I've worked so long. I have some very close work relationships, but work relationships can be tenuous because it's just like you said, sort of when people leave the church, when people leave the job, you say you're going to keep in touch, but then you don't, because when you don't have the work stuff to talk about anymore, the work meetings, you don't have that thing that connects you, and those kind of fall apart. So, and work can be political. But you're spending most of your time as an adult at work, I feel like, I mean, if you are a parent and maybe you don't work outside the home, you're spending most of the time with your small children, and when you're with other adults, it might be like a mom and me class or something. Well, that's not really something that connects you like a common interest. That's just, we both do the same job or we both have toddlers the same age. That doesn't mean you have anything in common. So I think the way that we have friends, and when I say you and I, if you look outside of the church, the friends that we have outside of church, and a lot of them ended up at church anyway, but that happened because we intentionally had interest that united us, like board gaming, or for you, disc golf. You had these things that brought you into these relationships, So I think it's harder as an adult because you have to be willing to show up somewhere. Like you would show up, I'm going to go play soccer. I don't know look at how many people you met playing adult soccer, So then why did those friendships work? Well, because you were committed to play so many games, in a season. You knew you were showing up at least once a week. You had to communicate. And then it was easy to find 1 or 2 people you have something in common with. But I think that's the other piece. You have to be so intentional as an adult. And if you're tired, and depending on where you are in your life stage, even if you meet somebody you really connect with, if they're at a totally different life stage, it may be hard to keep that friendship going. Because like if I had a friend right now that had toddlers when I have my, adult kids, unless I'm really patient and understanding, it may be hard, no matter how much we like each other, to like let that friendship blossom. There's just so many things competing.
Do you think it's harder for men or women to find friends at this age, at our age, at 50?
I don't know, because I think I know a ton of women I see that feel lonely. Even me with all my friends sometimes feel lonely, because I think, but I have a lot of friends. I think in some ways it may be, well, I think it depends. Are you talking about acquaintances or deep friendships? I'm
talking about friendships. Like I find women, it seems, are looking for other women that are in the exact same stage of life they are.
Right.
They want, if they're a mom,
they want everybody.
They want theirs to be mom. If they're a mom that's a professional, they want They want the woman to be a professional. If it's a mom that stays at home, they want to find other women that walk in their shoes. Because for whatever reason, this is what I've experienced. Ladies feel like they need that to have somebody that understands them. Men, I don't find do that.
I will tell. It's not just that. Women are so judged, and I'm not saying men aren't, but we are so judged in society for every decision we make. I remember with Jacob, I'd been on bed rest for 12 weeks and couldn't even walk, and he had jaundice and was so sick, and I felt so shamed because I couldn't breastfeed, after like 8 weeks. Like, then I breastfed Maria for a year, but little things like that, women can, and I don't know how much of it's women being nasty, how much you perceive being judged, but social media was getting hot and heavy then. And so, are you vaccinating your kids? And people are ready to kill you, rip out your jugular over that. Are you breastfeeding? Are you doing cloth diapers? Don't even start on women
it's a totally
if you're
different
working.
Issue. I don't think.
But if you're working outside the home, no, it's not just though connecting though. But Mike, I think people feel like other people can't understand. You feel so. Men have always maybe worked outside the home, had kids. There were some traditional roles. It's newer for women to be figuring out how you balance this world of sometimes working outside the home, being a professional, plus having kids. And so you have women at all stages making very different choices about how they're going to live their life. Some out of necessity, because some don't really have a choice, and some are actually choosing.
The reason is because women are more judgier. I'm not saying this to make a joke. I'm saying women tend to be more judgier of one another. So you feel like if I can find people in my tribe that are in the same shoes I am, I won't feel judged for the decisions I'm making.
I don't know. I think it's unfair to say that women do judge more, but the ones that judge are very vocal about their judge. It's just like we've talked about in politics. We feel like the whole world is like the Republicans and Democrats or conservatives and liberals are so split, when really the super vocal ones are the ones that are so split. There's probably a lot in the middle, but those super vocal ones make you feel so bad, about yourself. I feel like it's kind of like that with women. It's not even necessarily women are always judging, but you may feel like you're being judged because of things you read that are written by these women, and just the expectations of for us, we've been fed our whole life, you're supposed to be this skinny, you're supposed to look this way, you're supposed to eat this, you're supposed to take care of your family this way. If you work outside the home, you're supposed to do it this way. And so it's hard because you're probably already judging yourself so much. And maybe that's the other. I think as women, we judge ourselves a lot. We question and we judge ourselves. So then even if people aren't judging us, we may perceive that we're being judged.
Well, and just speaking on behalf of dudes, I know I personally, when I meet a guy, I don't start sizing him up and trying to figure out the who, what, when, and where, how much he relates to me. It's just do we get along or not? Like, I don't care if he's married, divorced, single. I don't care if he has kids, don't have kids. I don't care what kind of job he has. None of that at all affects me if I'm going to be friends with this person or not. Because I don't feel like guys, or maybe it's just the guys I'm around, we don't judge each other in that way. Like, I don't, maybe that's a certain status. Maybe I'm not high enough up the food chain, like maybe, wealthier or more sophisticated guys tend to judge one another more. But in the groups I hang out with or the guys I meet, I never feel judged. And I don't feel like anybody, I feel like, do I get along with you? Great. If not, no big deal. We'll move on. It has nothing to do with what your life is made up of.
Well, and I don't know, and part of it may be too, and this is...
And this may just be a man-woman thing.
Well, it may be a man-woman thing, or this may be a Mike-Beth thing. I mean, I guess that's the other thing. I feel kind of hesitant to speak on behalf of all women.
You can. I mean, you're president of All Women's Alumni Board.
But I do think, and again, I don't want to, I hate feeding stereotypes that women are judgy and harsh towards each other, because part of this, too, may not even be so much women on women as it is the roles society has kind of put us in, the boxes, the stereotypes, the things. Because again, I think it's just a little different for women, because if you think about it, women didn't, I mean, if you think about how long we voted or how long women could get a loan in their name. I mean, it's relatively new in the grand scheme of things for women to have the independence and the choices that they have. So maybe that makes it sometimes us more sensitive to it, or more just, I guess, feeling, like I said, maybe sometimes it's even the perception. But I do think it's possible. I've made good friends as an adult, but it's having to be intentional about it. And the reason I asked that question of you, I think the other thing is, I think it can be harder for you men to find deep relationships. I feel like y'all can find lots of superficial relationships, we go do this together. But sometimes it's harder for you to
back.
Okay.
Because what I've seen, again, this is only out of the lens of a pastor.
Yeah.
And dealing with church members and counseling church members or whatnot. Men are much more adept to fishing.
Yeah.
In that I'm going to I'll throw out 100 lines and get 100 bites.
Right.
And it looks like there's a very superficial, more shallow acquaintance type friendships, right? Mm-hmm. And women can say, no, you want that one that's deep. But the problem with that is that what I've seen is women refuse to throw out their line because they're like, I only want to catch the big one. It's easy. I would, you brought up disc golf. I'm in a disc golf group of guys, and one of us will write, hey, I'm going to go play such and such course today at 3:00 if anybody wants to join me. And whoever joins, and it's kind of like you're fishing. And out of that group of 30 guys, there may be 2 that you actually can really relate to and you form a deep friendship with. And where the women, you don't want to get 2 out of 30. You want to get 2 out of 2. Mm-hmm. It's like, I want to find a lady or 2 that we can just go super deep. I don't want a bunch of superficial or shallow relationships. But you got to have the shallow to be able to find the one that is going to be deeper.
I think though too.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. But I was trying to think about the why. Okay, and this is probably, again, I hate stereotypes. I'm not trying to do this, but not only was I a teenage girl, but then watching my daughter be a teenage girl, there's something different in the way women and men sometimes relate, starting at younger ages, that I think hurts women's ability sometimes to do what you're saying and cast the net, because there's a lot of opportunity for rejection. And that's not to say that you men don't have fear of rejection, but to cast a net, when you're in high school, I mean, I know there's popular guys, there's popular girls and there's cliques and stuff, but you've seen it even with our boys and our girls. With boys, it just seems more straightforward, like what's happening when somebody doesn't like somebody. With girls, there's just this stuff that happens that like lots of things that are happening behind the scenes, and lots of, because I just remember watching Maria go through it too. It's not as like, and so I think to a certain extent for women, it's hard because if you cast the net and like, okay, if I cast the net today and 3 people show up for me, but another woman casts the net tomorrow and 10 people show up for her. Okay, the logical part of me knows that 3 people may have only showed up for me because I picked a day that, a competing event's going on and somebody's kid was really sick. But in my mind, I go through the automatically kind of like that rejected girl in high school that has been shunned by the popular kids, like, well, they must not like me as much. That's why. And so I don't know. It takes a level of vulnerability or something, I think, for women. And I think it goes back to like whatever these subtle things are that happen at high school's even too old, and starting in even probably middle school, you really start to see just this different way in relating. I mean, I can't put my words around what happens, but you saw it with our boys versus our girls.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a different in this in
we see it in youth ministry too.
Yeah, we can't
years.
categorize all men and women are like this, but the majority. I think women have much more complex relationships because there's layer upon layer there. Oh yeah, they hung out with me, but what did they really think about me?
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Right.
And where guys are just like you said, they're pretty straightforward. Like if we want to hang out with you, I have not. Then we don't feel guilted into like hanging out with one another or that kind of thing.
Yeah. It's just a different dynamic.
And I think that does. I think there's probably some of that is just nurtured into you in middle school and high school, where maybe as 40 and 50-year-old adult women, that's no longer the case. But you almost have that PTSD from middle school and high school where it was the case.
Yes.
Where you're assuming everyone's still acting like they did when they were 16.
Right.
But because
even if it's subconscious and even if consciously they're not. Yeah. Yes, I think that does.
Yeah.
And I think boys get wounded in different ways
think they get
by
wounded
other
too,
men.
And I think it's guys can make acquaintances and shallow friendships really quick. And I think it takes them a little longer to feel like they can go deep. But all it takes is one guy to show some vulnerability. Right. And all of a sudden you're like, all right, I can trust this guy. I can be vulnerable.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I can think of a couple people in my life right now that, I feel like I'm more vulnerable and more comfortable in who I am because they were vulnerable and comfortable who they were. And
but I bet it's interesting you say that, because I wonder if you talk to guys that were vulnerable, how many of them had their vulnerability ultimately used against them versus women. I mean, I know that's some things that scarred me, times when I was vulnerable, like that was 100% weaponized against me, when I was younger, to your point. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about friendships, and you look at how many TV shows are hit TV shows based on friendship. Yeah. There's a TV show literally called Friends.
Right. Yes.
And which is one of the most famous TV shows that's ever happened. You got the Seinfelds. Yeah. Even The Office, which is they were all friends. Ultimately, I mean, you think of any of these shows that are built around friendships. What makes them popular is because that's what people long for. I think. And
you long for the people who accept you despite like that quirkiness and weirdness, who embrace those differences, like on The Office, Michael Scott he gets to have character growth because people are patient and tolerant and accepting and, that kind of thing. Yeah. Right. You long for that in your own life. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you see that in The Office in the very first episode, the pilot, he starts out making this really bad remark to Pam. Yeah. And then at the end of that episode, he acts like he's going to fire her and she cries. But then who's the one that ran to the airport to see him when he left? It was her. Right. Because they had become so close.
Right.
And she loved him so much.
Right.
You know, as a friend. And so I think we see that and we long for that. You and I are watching a TV show right now that we're hooked on.
Yeah.
And we're a little bit late to the game.
Well, I was going to say we're hooked, but we've done 3 episodes. 5? Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah.
We're 5 in. We're halfway
very
through
new.
the first season.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Of the Yellow Jackets.
Yes.
Which is girl high school team set in 1996. They're flying to another city to do a tournament. Their plane crashes. And now you fast forward 25 years later, you know, and it's 2 different timelines. You're trying to figure out, so there's always flashing back between the teenage version of the girls and the adult version of the girls.
Yeah.
And it's just built around these relationships. Girls who are friends on the plane, but before the wreck, hate each other now. Like you know what I mean? So you're wanting to find out what happened, but it's built around still that idea of friendships, you know, and things that connect you. And it just has got me thinking, you know, just about our own friendships today, like people, humans, who we are, the difficulties adults have in making friends, how society has changed in making friends. You know, social media leads us to think that if we have 2,000 Facebook friends or we have
and people
1,000 followers on Instagram, that they're our friends, and they're not. You know, they're just not. I could probably go through half my list and I don't know half those people. I met them at some point and they friended me on Facebook, but I don't know them, you know? And so they're not friends. And so that's a false word to use, but it's what Facebook has driven into our brains. And,
the one thing I will say, though, about that show, I just thought of, and I know we've talked a lot, some of it is like, I don't want to say gender stereotypes, but just differences that we've experienced. But one thing that's so interesting is about that show, and this goes for guys and girls, or maybe, and I wish I could say age makes this better, but for some people it doesn't. One reason I think, too, our friendships have been okay, this is not a spoiler on this show, but there is a plane crash, and like, there's one point where you can tell everybody's getting mad at one girl, and that you can tell everybody's talking about her and looking at her, but it's like, why on earth aren't they just like having a conversation with her? But I see that with my boys and girls, like Jacob and Maria have both talked to us about things, and I'm like, hey, you know, you could just sit down with this person and just tell them how you feel, or even how you feel maybe too much. Just say, hey, you need to wash your dishes, and they're like, they look at you like you have 6 heads. Like, why on earth would I tell them directly that I'm frustrated that they won't wash dishes? But that's exactly what you see on that show. And I think that's the other difference. Like, when we went on these things, like one of the groups was so organized, they preemptively made sure that wouldn't happen because they had a chart made out and you were assigned, you know, Monday night, these 3 people have kitchen duty. Tuesday night, these 3 people. They know some people like me are not as strong in the kitchen. So that meant that I helped like either just prep and set the table.
About one of these women's trips.
Yeah, one of these women's trips. Yeah. And I would like clean the dishes. But it was like they almost, before that could even become a problem, you know, it's like, I guess, a difference in your approach too, based on not just age, but maturity and life experience. Like, that's a place, you know, things can go south. Like on a mission trip. I mean, we've seen this too on mission trips. If we don't set expectations, people might get irritated because they feel like somebody's working more or doing more. I think the more with maturity, you can head off those things and then just like people have conversations. I think that's the other thing that destroys friendships is just the lack of honesty and transparency. And I think about the friendships I've lost because of that over the years. And that makes me sad, you know, but I think I just thought about that based on that show, you know, like.
So if someone's listening right now, this is the closing segment, and they're like, all right, I agree with all of that. How do I find a friend? What do you tell them?
What I would say is, I mean, there's so many ways now, like those Facebook groups, meet up, any of that stuff. I think you just, and this is uncomfortable, and I know I'm an extrovert, so it seems like it's easier, but even I feel intimidated in some of these situations. But I think 2 things. I think, one, you've got to put yourself in situations where you're going to meet people, whether that, like, for example, the public library offers art classes, book clubs, sewing clubs, spice clubs, garden clubs. You know, just show up, you know, and granted, are those people going to be just like you? Probably not, but like you may meet somebody that at least you could hang out with. Pick something too, hopefully you kind of like or are interested in. Or like a board game. We talked about a board game convention. Be willing to go hike. Or if you see somebody out and you can strike up a conversation with them. One friend that my family has is our friend Ronnie. He's 87 years old. And he's like a part of our family now, but we met him because every Sunday he ate breakfast at the same restaurant we did. And so we would look over every once in a while and smile and chat. I don't know when this started, 2012 or something, maybe?
At least. It's over 10 years.
Over 10 years that we've known him. So we looked over and chatted with him one day, and then we would chat. And then eventually we were just like, why don't you just pull up a chair and sit with us? And then it was like, we didn't just do breakfast anymore. It was like, why don't you come with us to see the Christmas lights? Why don't you stop by at Thanksgiving and say hi? To the point that now we've been doing Sunday breakfast with him for maybe 10 years. But I mean, so sometimes it's that. And I think that's where the phones kill us, because there's less opportunity. Because like your tendency now, if you sit alone, isn't to strike up a conversation with somebody at the table beside you, even if they're there. Like you think about you and Panera. You've made friends that way. Mm-hmm. You've seen the same people. You sit at the same booth. You go get your coffee. We've met like so many people, but that was because we weren't, but if, and not to say too, I know some people like our friend Jacob goes there to work. It's not saying you can't, but like he also, says hi or smiles or, and so I think you've got to put yourself out there. And then I would say the second part is once you meet a few people you connect with, I would take it at face value. If somebody has to cancel on you or something, I would give them grace a few times. Now, if it becomes a pattern, okay, yeah, then maybe they're not ready for the friendship you're ready for. But I think being willing, particularly for other adults, to try to suspend that thing in our head that automatically thinks, oh, well, they're just trying to blow me off. They don't like me. They're rejecting me. To try to suspend that belief and give them the benefit of the doubt, I think that would help a lot of friendships too.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I'd be like, you just got to start with what you like. Find people who maybe have the same kind of interests and see where that goes.
Yeah.
I was just having a conversation with one of my very, very good friends this week, and we met playing board games,
Mm-hmm.
and now we hang out all the time. But it all started just because he played board games, I played board games. We met one time at a board game function and
Mm-hmm.
played some board games together and liked playing together, and it kind of went from there. Same thing like with disc golf,
Yeah.
I had a friend that got me into it, 13, 14 years ago. He was like, hey, you ever played? No. You want to go play with me? Sure. And we went. I knew him, but not super well, but he ended up teaching me, and we played all the time until he moved away. And then I've been able to use that in friendships, and finding people who play disc golf, and we play together, and you talk and you walk,
Mm-hmm.
and some of those friendships do get really deep. But I would just say, figure out what do I like to do, and let's find people who do that and see where that goes.
Or people that volunteer at the Hope Center and become friends.
Yeah.
The people we've met that way. Somebody invites you to church. The other thing is putting yourself out there. Like we've got that spares and pairs, like having some trust in people, you're newer at a church or something, take a chance, put your name in there, let them pair you with some people to meet. And I think the other thing is, and this is another hard thing, but I see this a lot too. People will go and be like, well, no one paid attention to me or whatever. But then sometimes I'll be like, but how many people did you talk to? And they may say none. And the thing that they're forgetting is, like, if you and I we didn't know each other, we're both sitting in the room and we don't talk to anybody the whole time we're there. And I go home and I'm like, well, I didn't like that event because no one talked to me. You may be going home and saying the exact same thing, but I didn't talk to you. Do you see? Neither one of us talked to anybody. So sometimes you've got to I know it sounds corny, but people say you got to be the friend you want somebody to be to you. And sometimes you've got to start out even if it's against your nature, you got to be the person that if you want somebody to talk to you, that you take a chance and say hi to them first, and that opens a door.
Yeah. Oh, we'll have to come up with some type of friendship poll question for the week.
Oh, yeah.
We'll put that out there. We hadn't done a poll question in a couple weeks. The last poll question was about bucket list. We got some great comments. Pretty close to 50-50. People having bucket list to no bucket list. Most people said they did not. Barely, marginally different. But some people did. And they, inevitably their bucket list almost always includes some type of travel, it seemed.
Right.
Things they wanted to go and see before they die. So, we'll come up with some type of friend one. But anyway, that kind of took a turn down a friendship road.
Didn't know we were talking about that at all.
So hopefully that will help somebody this week.
Hopefully people will be inspired to go
find a
friend.
Yes.
Yeah. Go walk on a trail.
And if you're local to the Triad area of North Carolina and you're a female, Beth will be your friend. Is that what I'm hearing? So you,
yes,
as an Enneagram 7, you have all these, you can go to art galleries or play pickleball and everything in between.
Yeah. Now, the one thing I can't guarantee, though, is that I'll be interested in it 12 months from now, whatever brings us together, because as an Enneagram 7, I may lose interest in that at some point. But that's another good point. Our pickleball lessons, see, you can make friends. I think some of those folks did make friends at our pickleball lessons, just learning to play pickleball.
Yeah, you and Susan. I mean, there's been a lot of people who have made good friends that they were there.
Yeah,
me and Cindy. That's you've done well there.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Well, that's about it for today. We'll let everybody go, but thanks for tuning in. This is Mike.
And this is Beth.
And this has been Hey, Are You Still There?